Kung flu?
What are you doing in this country?
Why doesn't she go back to where she came from?
Oh my God.
A racist-filled rant against a SoCal Asian family at a restaurant in Carmel has gone viral.
Oh my God.
Since the COVID crisis began, many Asian Americans have been targeted by racial slurs.
Everything comes from China.
And even physical attacks.
We're being attacked. That's been happening throughout the country.
Kung flu.
China virus, the China plague.
Our leader is spewing out xenophobic slurs and hate. That's not okay.
Asian American hate is as old as American history.
Chinese are driven out in town after town and their homes destroyed. The Chinese became undesirable.
When I was a child, Pearl Harbor was bombed. Overnight, this country was swept up in naked, outright hatred of people who looked like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor.
No Proud Boys, no KKK.
Ugly parts of America have come into light.
Staying quiet is not an option anymore.
Asians and Black activists have always come together against a common enemy, which is obviously white supremacy and racism.
Democracy is not a product you buy, it's not a project you finish, it's a process that you engage in.
I'm ready to vote.
Early voting starts on October 17th.
Everything seems to have been shaken up. All of our voices need to be heard.
Hello, I'm Elaine Quijano. 2020 has been a hard year for everyone, including Asian Americans. Since the first known documented case of COVID-19 was found in Wuhan, China, Asian Americans have been battling a backlash of racial bias, coming to grips with their place as people of color in a country experiencing social unrest and realizing the power of their vote in a pivotal election year. First, we begin on the front lines, where Asian Americans have felt the devastating effects of the virus.
So where are we now, Patrick?
We're on Mott Street right now. This is the main street of Chinatown.
It's Friday night in Chinatown in New York City.
Yeah, there are a lot of empty tables.
Yeah.
Empty chairs.
Yeah.
What do you think when you see that?
It hurts.
Patrick Mock manages the bakery at 46 Mott in the heart of this neighborhood. He's seen countless storefronts shuttered.
What everyone was feeling in March, Chinatown was feeling it in January already. When you was first hearing about the pandemic overseas and because of xenophobia and racism, it hurt us our busiest time of year, which is Lunar New Year's.
From February to April, an estimated 233,000 Asian American businesses closed across the country. And over the past 7 months, the Asian unemployment rate has tripled.
We've been taking a hit since January. Then COVID happened, and now we're all hurting.
Mock pleaded with New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio in August.
We need help.
This video of the mayor turning away went viral. De Blasio later said he was grateful for Mock's ideas and advocacy.
I was pissed off. 1 minute you're thanking me for what I'm doing for a community. The next minute you turned away when I wasn't done with what I have to say.
COVID-19 has touched all Americans, even President Donald Trump, who tested positive last week.
President Trump is at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center tonight.
But people of color have been hit hardest by the pandemic. One recent analysis found Asian patients with COVID-19 were 57% more likely to be hospitalized than white patients, and 49% more likely to die.
Yesterday, my daughter celebrated her birthday. And of course, she wished her dad was here.
Nina Batayola and her husband Don Ryan found their life's calling as occupational therapists. But in late March, Don Ryan was hospitalized with COVID-19. He started to feel sick after working with a patient and colleagues who later tested positive. Don Ryan died on April 4th. He was 40 years old.
Every day is a reminder. So I felt like a change would be good for us.
Do you have anything here?
Last month, Batayola and her 2 children moved from New Jersey to California to be closer to family. What would you say about the toll that this has been taking?
I know some of the people still don't believe that this is true unless it's happened to them and unless it's happened to somebody that they know, but this is real.
The Batayola family's struggles are part of a new chapter of hardship for Asian Americans, says Star Trek actor George Takei.
We're going through a very traumatic time for Asian Americans.
It's part of a history in this country that includes the internment of Japanese Americans like Takei and his family during World War II. What do you think this current COVID-19 pandemic has revealed about how Asian Americans are viewed today?
I don't think it's anything new. Each chapter is unique and different, the forces that played on us, but it all stems from hatred of people who look different.
The data sources that we used really don't adequately represent the Asian American population because it's such a diverse population.
Cardiologist Dr. Nilay Shah studies health disparities at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine in Chicago.
The South Asian and the Filipino American population are known to have higher rates, for example, of diabetes, and diabetes is known to be a predisposing factor to worse outcomes. The Asian American population is on track to be the largest minority population in the United States in the coming decades. I think that we need to make sure that we're representing our data equally to the representation of diversity of the American population.
Back in New York City's Chinatown, Patrick Mock hits the streets each week, handing out food and masks to his neighbors.
I know, I promised you.
Yeah. But I see the same people over and over again, buying the same things like my cup noodles to my sticky rice.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
I was thinking, oh, they might be homeless. And that's when I really wanted to give back to my community, because when you're at your lowest point and you find people that's willing to help you, you appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ahead, the outbreak spreads, sparking new trouble for Asian Americans. Asian Americans are facing discrimination not felt since the Japanese American internment camps during World War II. High unemployment and boycotts of businesses have ravaged their communities. As Weijia Zhang reports, there is also a disturbing trend of racist attacks.
Oh my God. These are the kinds of attacks Asian Americans have faced this year.
Every disease has ever came from China, homie. Everything comes from China. It's f***ing disgusting.
I don't think that there had ever been a time where I was scared or fearful of my life because of my race.
26-year-old Victor Yang says he will never forget that day in March when a bike ride with his girlfriend on these familiar Maryland trails ended with a frantic call for help.
DC 911.
Hi, right now I'm on the bike trail. I've had these kids chasing us, throwing rocks. Stop!
What was shocking was these individuals kept on following us, then taunting us, saying coronavirus or COVID-19.
What happened to Yang is one of over 2,800 hate incidents reported against Asian Americans across the country since the pandemic started 7 months ago. A nearly 845% increase compared to all the reported cases in the last 3 years combined.
What are you doing in this country?
What am I doing in this country?
Oh, you look at this
What am I doing in this country?
Yeah.
What am I doing in this country? I'm an American citizen.
Asian American hate is as old as American history.
83-year-old actor and civil rights advocate George Takei was 4 years old when Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941.
And overnight, this country was swept up by suspicion and fear and naked, outright hatred. We had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor. There was no charge other than looking like this.
Trump's gonna you.
So it's no surprise to Takei that Asian Americans today are shouldering blame for the coronavirus.
Americans said we don't want you here. That's why we elected President Trump.
Especially, he says, since the attacks are starting from the top.
We have political leadership that is using that and constantly using the term Chinese virus.
I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus.
President Trump first publicly said the phrase Chinese virus to describe COVID-19 on March 18th. 5 days later, he crossed out the language from his prepared remarks, declaring this instead.
It's very important that we totally protect our Asian American community in the United States and all around the world.
But as the pandemic worsened, he resurrected the rhetoric. Mr. Trump even brought up Beijing when I asked him about testing.
Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling you, I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like that.
That's not a nasty question.
Please go ahead.
During a campaign rally in June, President Trump's tough talk took another turn.
I can name Kung Flu. I can name 19 different versions of names.
The Justice Department included COVID-19 backlash in their hate crimes training, but has yet to take additional measures to combat the anti-Asian discrimination. During the George W. Bush administration, the DOJ formed a special task force after the 9/11 terrorist attacks to prosecute crimes against Muslim Americans.
People were afraid to come out. Every time they came out to go buy groceries, they're looking behind their backs. They're fearful of being attacked just because they were Chinese.
A lack of federal help isn't stopping community activists like Carlin Chan. Since March, he and his group of volunteers have been patrolling Manhattan's Chinatown, his hometown of over 60 years.
We may actually see more rise in hate crimes. Staying quiet is not an option anymore.
In Culver City, California, the next generation of Asian Americans like Tammy Cho couldn't keep silent anymore either.
If we do not address this issue now and continue to have dialogue, we're going to see history repeat itself again.
Cho co-created the group Hate is a Virus.
Hate is a virus. Hate is a
virus. Hoping to raise $1 million to help keep family businesses and restaurants impacted by COVID-19 afloat, whatever it will take to stop the discrimination from spreading.
I do think COVID in some ways was a catalyst for these issues coming into the surface.
Back in Washington, D.C., Victor Yang, who now works for the Florida Democratic Party, says bringing light to incidents like the one he experienced is critical to move forward.
The last thing that we want in this country is more violence. We are citizens like every other American.
Coming up, a new generation of the model minority joins the social justice movement. A minority representing several countries, languages, religions, and skin colors, Asian Americans have found a new kinship with the Black American struggle for social justice. Nancy Chen reports on why some believe this is the year the model minority has finally become woke.
I think tacos are like a quintessentially LA food. Everybody eats tacos.
Everybody does indeed eat tacos, including the homeless in South Los Angeles.
And you wanted 10 meals, right?
Which is why every Friday, local restaurant owner Susan Park gives away thousands for free.
And people feel like they're cared for. You know, it's a food hug.
The park is giving more than just a food hug. It's her way of supporting Black Lives Matter as she serves predominantly Black neighborhoods.
I know that it was Black people and Black bodies that were at the front lines of fighting for the Civil Rights Act to be passed. Their bodies were brutalized, and yet I benefit.
Park created the Facebook page Asian Americans for Black Lives Matter after the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. This summer, the movement was reignited after George Floyd was killed, with many Asian Americans joining in the protests. Among them, 32-year-old Tiffany So.
COVID-19 definitely sparked another awakening where Asian Americans and some younger generations of Asian Americans have been for the first time experiencing this more overt in-your-face racism.
Part of that awakening includes starting conversations about racial injustices with their families, bridging different views across generations as they question their place in America's racial fabric.
Because race is talked about as if everything's black and white, Asian immigrants sometimes wonder, where do we fit in?
Frank Wu is president of Queens College in New York. He's a scholar of Asian American studies.
It's a moral dilemma. Are you going to declare that you're a person of color, or do you aspire to be an honorary white? Or do you just get excluded as a perpetual foreigner, right? Those are the options.
Those are not good options at all.
Right, yes. Yeah, none of those is good.
Wu says part of that forced identity is shaped by the idea of the model minority, a belief that Asian Americans are more successful than other minorities because of hard work.
It's false flattery. It's not even really a compliment of Asian Americans. It's just a way to denigrate other people of color, of saying, look at the Asians. They made it. Why can't you?
Stereotypes like these led to years of mistrust and unconscious bias among the communities. In the 70s, Korean Americans opened businesses in underserved neighborhoods in South LA. Sometimes there was tension. Frustrations came to a head in 1991 when 15-year-old Latasha Harlins was killed after a Korean store owner accused her of stealing orange juice. In this graphic security video, Harlins is shot in the back.
Find the defendant, Stacy C. Kuhn, not guilty of the crime of assault.
And then, a year later, when a jury acquitted white police officers for beating Rodney King, Los Angeles erupted. Abandoned by law enforcement, stores were looted across South LA. More than 60% of the damage on Korean American businesses.
Where's your human dignity?
A history that motivates Danny Park today to build bridges. His family has operated a convenience shop in South LA for more than 2 decades. But after taking over the business, the 28-year-old is now empowering and uniting the community by training residents for jobs at his healthy food market. Among the items sold, an orange juice named after Latasha Harlins.
Why do you think it's important to put that out front and have a reminder of that and remember in such a way?
I think it's a way to honor our ancestor, honoring our ancestor Latasha Harlins, who's been killed and who has transitioned. We're working on ensuring that the violence and the harms don't happen again.
Change is slowly coming, from a cup of orange juice to athletes like U.S. Open champion Naomi Osaka, who wore masks honoring Black lives. The solidarity is inspiring to actor and activist George Takei.
It is a much more heartening kind of movement with the diversity of America coming together.
As Susan Park continues to serve,
Our streets!
She still receives dozens of messages from Asian Americans who want to get involved.
You just listen to people and show that you care about them and that they want you to be their friend.
Communities working together to create change.
Still to come, power in numbers, how Asian Americans could have a big impact on the election this November. The Asian American community is diverse and growing. With 11 million eligible voters spread across several battleground states, Michael George reports on the increasing power at the ballot box that could have an impact in November.
I'm ready to vote. I want everyone's voice to be heard.
They're ready to vote across America.
We are registering voters. Nevadans. Early voting starts on October 17th. So that's the Tagalog.
Asian Americans like 25-year-old Jaewon Jung want their voices heard too.
We got one more for you.
Jung, an immigrant from South Korea, will cast her first ballot for president. And because she just became a citizen, her vote is a monumental moment. She's doing her part with One APIA Nevada, making videos telling others why it's important to vote in the battleground state.
rockthevote.org에서 오늘 투표 등록하세요.
Are you scared for the future of the country?
I think I am scared for the future of the country. I think one of the biggest issues right now is that people are so divided. One thing I'm going to look for in a candidate is to unite all of the groups together.
Candidates who have largely ignored these voters in the past now recognize their power.
2020 is going to be a watershed year when it comes to Asian American community members finding their vote and finding their voice.
That's right. Yeah. Stephen Choi is an advocate for the New York Immigration Coalition.
How powerful is the Asian American vote?
The Asian American vote is incredibly powerful. Across the country, it is going to be the swing vote, the margin of victory in so many critical elections, including the presidential election.
You're saying the Asian American vote could actually determine the outcome of this election?
Absolutely.
Their power comes from their numbers. More than 22 million strong, Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial group in the country. More than half are eligible to vote, a record number.
They can mail it to you. Check this one.
More Asian Americans identify as Democrat than Republican. In a recent survey, more than half say they support former Vice President Joe Biden. But President Trump has a sizable base among Vietnamese American voters.
Good morning. Are you registered to vote?
Which candidate gets their vote may come down to who best addresses their main concerns, including the pandemic, unemployment, and racial justice.
If we remain visible and voiceless, then we will be victimized.
Activist and Hollywood icon George Takei.
Sometimes elections are won by a small margin, a thin margin, and we can make that difference. We should be mindful that we count.
With just weeks to go before Election Day, community organizers are handing out information printed in several languages with one message: vote. The Biden campaign is aggressively courting Asian American support in Nevada.
Nevada actually is the only battleground or swing state with a double-digit AAPI population at roughly 11%.
Christian Botto works for the state Democratic Party.
We know what this community means to the outcome of this election, to the state, and we're not taking it for granted.
I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
Biden sent a strong signal that inclusion matters when he chose Kamala Harris, the first vice presidential nominee of Black and Asian heritage. Her mother was born in India.
She raised us to be proud, strong Black women. And she raised us to know and be proud of our Indian heritage.
President Trump is also working hard in Nevada, a state he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He hopes to turn that around with his record on the economy, while facing criticism that his comments on the coronavirus promote hate against Asian Americans.
And before the China virus came in, produced the best unemployment numbers for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans ever recorded.
Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes is co-chair of Asian Pacific Americans for Trump.
He has done an amazing job creating an environment of success, whether it's financial and economic success or standing up for families or freedom here and abroad.
President Trump is trying to build on the goodwill he's established with Indian Americans. He's attended rallies with India's Prime Minister in Houston and in a jam-packed cricket stadium in India.
Mr. Donald Trump.
I want to make sure that a candidate earns my vote.
Rani Mazumdar immigrated from India when he was 12 years old. He embraced the American dream and now owns 4 Indian restaurants in New York City. He says neither party has shown him it can repair the damage COVID-19 has done to small businesses.
No. You're not going to win me over just because you said one thing, just because you got in a candidate that actually matches my skin color. That's not how it works. Show me your policy. Show me how efficient you are with those policies and actually executing it. Then we will talk.
This election, an unprecedented chance for Asian Americans to make their voices heard.
For Asian Americans, 2020 has been a battle for their lives in a pandemic, a battle against bias, a battle for respect. But most of all, it has always been a struggle to be seen and heard as the Americans we know we are. For all of my colleagues at CBS News, I'm Yelen Quijano. Thank you for watching Asian Americans Battling Bias. We hope it encourages a more united States of America.
We thought it was a lockdown. They opened the fire. Them bullets was flying. Who said it was a lockdown? Goddamn lie. Oh my, time heals all, but you out of time now. Judge gotta watch us from the clock tower. Little tear gas cleared the whole place out. I'll be back with the hazmat for the next round. We was trying to protest and the fires broke out. Look out for the secret agents, they be planted in the crowd. Said it's civil unrest, but you sleep so sound like you don't hear the screams when we catching beat down. Staying quiet when they killing, but you speak loud when we ride. Got opinions coming from a place of privilege. Sicker than the COVID, how they did them on the ground. Speaking of the COVID, is it still going around? Won't you tell me about the looting? What's that really all about? Cause they throw away black lives like paper towels plus unemployment rate. What, 40 million now? Killed a man in broad day, might never see a trial. We just wanna break chains like slaves in the South. Started in the North End, but we in the downtown. Riot cops try to block. Now